And this is what we need to do as Irish people, is to go to these sites and re-engage with the symbolic nature of Ireland, with the heroic nature of Ireland, with the ancient history, the ancient mythology and folklore of Ireland. Too many people just go by these places every single day and never connect. And that's why I'm here today, is to connect with the spirit of Chulainn.
This is a very special video for me, the first time I've covered the topic of Chulainn, Ireland's greatest hero, essentially. Definitely the most famous. Chulainn, the Hound of Chulainn. It's a long story to talk about Chulainn from his birth till his death, so I will keep this brief enough because there are many videos online that do this a great service. So the first site we're going to is Dún Dealgan. This is a huge moat, a type of fort, and it has its history in mythology. It is obviously, as I said, hailed as the birthplace of the legendary hero Chulainn from the Ulster cycle, but also known as the Fort of Dealga. It is said that the site was named after a Firbolg chieftain Dealga, who was credited with its construction before Chulainn's time. This is straight from the OPW site Heritage Ireland. The other thing is that this place is hugely impressive. It's massive. It's you can just see the strategic nature of this. You can see very far away. You can see going around the moat. You can see it's quite steep. There's also evidence of a souterrain available as well. Then this lends to the fact that this place goes much further back than, say, the construction that is there now, that was built by a pirate Byrne, Patrick Byrne I think it was. This is much later in the 12th century, but the actual site itself, a lot of the time the Normans, when they came in, they took over these Gaelic sites, these Gaelic royal sites, these Gaelic strategic sites, and this is what happened. So I'm not going to go into the history of the Normans, but this is reputedly the place where Chulainn was buried. The power here is palpable. Even Dundalk itself has its motto, Mi Durug Chulainn Croga, I gave birth to brave Chulainn. That says it all, really. The ford of the River Dee. So this is where the great battle between Ferdia and Chulainn took place, foster brothers and best friends. This was a very complex story, and it would have been a part of the Tombo Cualnna, the defence of Ulster from Connacht. And Ferdiad did not want to fight Chulainn, but Queen Maeve, I think she tricked him into this, or forced him into it, and a great battle took place, and Ferdiad was a great fighter himself, but Chulainn eventually won out, and it was his great sadness and his great despair to kill his foster brother and one of his best friends. So the story goes that he carried him across the banks of the river.
This is the Battle of the Ford, where Ardee gets its name. Ardee, town in Louth, beautiful statue, absolutely incredible. This is his friend Ferdia that he killed. He was actually tricked into fighting him, and they lasted for 3 days. And Chulainn killed him with a spear, I think. And he carried him across the ford in sadness, because it was his friend that he grew up with and his foster brother. And it was Queen Maeve and her manipulations that got Ferdia to fight Chulainn. It's kind of a long, complicated story, but essentially Chulainn kills him and he is overcome with grief. And it's about 300 yards west. I think it's west. Is this way? Maybe it's that way. But this is it. Beautiful statue. Well done to Ardee for erecting this.
So the next place is Clochafarmore, or Stone of the Big Man. It's around 3 meters high, this stone, and it is, as you can see, replicated in this bronze statue in the GPO. The story goes that Louth would be the eventual person to kill Chulainn. Again, another complex story of these taboos and curses that were laid upon him because he didn't want to eat dog's meat, but he couldn't deny people their requests more than once or twice, and these hags were involved. And then eventually it was all down to the Morrigan and the Morrigan's relationship with Chulainn, and eventually Louth was involved in this, and Chulainn was weakened through these little kind of technicalities in the world of the supernatural. He says, "I will not die lying on the ground," so he stood himself up and tied himself to this stone, and it was only until the raven landed on his shoulder that they know he was dead. Again, there's a big long story to this, but that's not the purpose of today's video. There's plenty of great videos on YouTube. I just wanted to show you these points and where you can visit with Invasion Island tours as well. If you want to come with me, register your interest at www.invasionisland.com. So the last point, very quickly, is to another stone which is located back at the Dún Dealgan moat, but just before you get up to it you can just veer off into the field here, and there is actually this cool looking stone which they kind of call a monolith, a Bronze Age monolith. But there are different accounts of this, that it is the burial place of Chulainn. For me, it makes sense, buried back where he was born. A lot of people do this even till this day. But another refers to this stone as the herd of the cows of Dectira, named after Chulainn's mother Dectira. Now this is off the OBW website, which I'll link in the video description as well. So whatever the case may be, this stone is linked to Chulainn himself, either by his burial spot or by his mother as well. For me, I think it makes sense that he's buried here in the plains of Louth. This is where mainly the Tombo Chulainn took place, where he was reputedly born, where he spent his boyhood. There's a beautiful quote that I found. Chulainn and his friends are historical characters, seen as it were through mists of love and wonder, whom men could not forget, but for centuries continued to celebrate in countless songs and stories. They were not literary phantoms, but actual existences, imaginary and fictitious characters, mere creatures of idle fancy, do not live and flourish so in the world's memory.